I finally got the R1 back and boy am I excited. So a couple of things have been fixed on this bike and I'm super pumped because every single thing that I had an issue with has been sorted out. The main reason I took this bike in was to check if that frame was true and straight, and I'm super happy to tell you guys today that that frame is all good. There was just a little bit of work that needed to be done on this part of the frame, and I think that's because when this bike crashed, it kind of took a hit right over here, along with the rest of the engine over here. So I think that impact kind of pushed the frame out, because when they measured, they found that this gap was slightly bigger than it's supposed to, and they kind of heated this frame up, pushed it back to the way it's supposed to, remeasured everything, and yeah guys, this guy is sitting the way it's supposed to. And then the other thing that was worked on is this upper triple. Apparently this guy was a little bit warped. It was not sitting right, and that explains why I struggled in the last episode to get this fork up here. So yeah guys, as you can see by the loss of color here, they had to heat this guy up just so they can get it nice and straight, and this guy is all good and ready to be painted. And then the next thing I asked them to check for me was the forks, guys. I had a feeling that these might not be straight, and my suspicions were right. These were a little bit bent, so the guys took them out, straightened them for me, and they also did a full fork service. That means new fork seals right over there and new fork oil, so I don't have to worry about these forks in the near future. While we're on the forks, I noticed some deep scratches right over this area, and the guys kind of filled the area with some weld, smoothened it out, and basically this is all good and it's ready to be painted. So I'm happy that this was taken care of as well. This lower triple also got checked out, guys, because when I was putting these forks in, I noticed that there was a bit of a gap around one side, which didn't seem right. So I asked the guys to check that as well, and basically this wasn't straight as well. So that got fixed. As you guys can see, this fork is sitting flush around the triple, so that's pretty awesome that this whole entire front end has been taken care of. Moving along to the back, I did tell you guys that I was going to have this rear subframe checked just so we can make sure that everything on the bike is sitting the way it's supposed to, and that was a good call because the guys found two things that were wrong on this thing. So the first one is that the tail section was kind of bent right around here. It was kind of like bent at a slight angle. It wasn't too bad, but I mean we had to fix that and make sure everything is nice and straight. The second thing was that this rider foot peg on the left hand side was kind of pushed in a little bit. I guess when the bike fell, all that force kind of pushed it in, so the guys kind of pulled it out to match the right side in terms of the distance from the rear subframe to the peg. So everything is sitting nicely, everything is sitting the way it's supposed to. And while we're here guys, this little tab, if you remember, that broke off, got welded, as you guys can see. So I just need to give this coat of paint just so it doesn't rust or anything, but yeah, it's looking nice. Here's the other side, so we're looking good over there. The only thing that's a bit of an issue is that this little kind of like bracket over here, if you see on this side, got chipped off. So I don't know if that's going to be an issue when we put on our fairings, but I guess we'll see when we get there. Next is this engine mount bolt over here, which broke off on the tip. So this was going to be an issue for me to take out, guys, because these are usually screwed in tight, and if you don't have the kind of heads to undo the bolt, it'll be a headache. So as you can see, these guys welded on a little piece over here just so we can turn this, and I believe we can turn it by hand now because they loosened it. So that's pretty awesome. It's gonna help us remove this thing when we go and take our engine off. So that's everything on the bike that's been taken care of, guys, and I'm super happy, guys, because I can move forward with this project knowing that everything is the way it's supposed to. The frame is straight, the forks are straight, the upper and lower triples are straight, the rear subframe is straight, everything is good, guys. So over here I've got some items that were off the bike that were a bit damaged, and I asked the guys to kind of check them out for me and see if they can bring them back to life, guys. I'm gonna start with this front axle, which was actually on this front wheel, and if you guys remember, this thing was bent, and as you can see right now, this guy is all straight, guys. I'm super happy with how this came out, especially the fact that now we don't need to go and order one from Yamaha. And it's not that I don't want to go and buy new parts from Yamaha, guys, but if you can save something, bring it back to life, and it works just as good, why not? The other reason is that if I went and ordered this from Yamaha, I would have waited about 4 to 6 weeks for the part to arrive, because they have to ship it all the way from Japan, and I really don't want to have to wait that long, guys, for something so small. So this is all sorted, it's all good, it's ready for us to get our replacement front wheel, and then we should be good to go. Up next is the oil cooler, which had some damage right over here, so the guys welded it up, made sure that everything is sealed up nicely, and they even did a pressure test on this thing to make sure we don't have any leaks in the system, which is pretty awesome, guys. So yeah, I'm going to be reusing this. It's not the prettiest, but this thing is going to be tucked away, but the key here is that this thing works, it's functional, and it's going to allow us to test the engine and make sure everything is working perfectly. And we might change it at a later stage, we'll see if we need to, but for now this is what we're going to be going with. Then lastly, we've got our mid pipe over here, which had a bit of a bend in this area, and you can kind of see where the guys heated it up just to get it straight, and I'm happy with the way it looks. The main reason why I actually decided to save this thing is I learned that this is actually an Akrapovic mid pipe, because I saw some previous photos that had an Akrapovic tailpiece, which led me to believe that it was probably mid pipe and tailpiece combo, and these things are not cheap, guys, so it would have been a shame to just toss this thing away if we can save it. So yeah, I'm very glad we were able to bring this back to life, guys. I'm pretty sure after a nice clean and buff, it'll look nice and new. All right, guys, so that's everything that's been done on the bike. I'm super happy with how everything turned out. I'm even more happier with the service I got from Racebox. Those guys were exceptional. If you want your frames, forks, wheels, everything to be straightened out professionally, check them out and they'll sort you out. Now obviously, as you guys can tell, this frame needs to be repainted because of the scoring that we have going on here. So my plan is to actually re-strip the bike again, so take off the forks, remove the rear subframe, the swing arm, and obviously take off the engine, because we still need to put in the 2023 engine on this frame. So I'm going to take all of that off so we can get this painted properly, have it looking nice and new, and I think we should be good to start reassembling everything for the last time, guys. So yeah, I think let's not waste any more time. Let's get everything off the bike and get it ready to get painted. First to come off is the rear subframe. I had already stripped it in the previous episode, so I decided to start with this since it would be the easiest to remove. It's held on with 4 bolts, which I could undo with my Torx bit. And just like that, rear subframe is off. Next, I move on to the front section. I loosen up the upper bolt and jack up the bike so I could remove the upper triple, front wheel and forks. Then I can undo the air duct, which is also secured by 4 bolts that are bolted onto the frame. I thought I was ready to just pull this off the frame, but I found one wire that was still connected. So I just unplugged that. Then I can unclip it from where it's hooked. And just like that, the whole piece can come off. I've got this front section off the bike, and I decided to remove this guy as one piece along with all these wires, and that's because I don't want to forget how wires are routed and that sort of thing, because there's quite a bit of wires over here. Plus I noticed while I was kind of planning this out that I don't need to disconnect stuff. I can just pull everything all as one piece. So when we go ahead and remove the engine, we'll be able to kind of pull the wires as well with the engine, with this front piece. And then when we put in this other engine, we'll just unplug where we need to, hook this up. You guys will see when we get there, but it makes sense in my head right now. So that's the route that I'm taking. So now I'm gonna try and get this lower triple off the bike. Then we'll be done with the front section. Then we can move on to the back. To remove the lower triple, I've got to undo the 2 locking nuts on the steering stem. I didn't have a C-spanner, so I used some adjustable pliers, and those seem to do the job. I got the top one off, followed by the rubber spacer and the lower nut. Then I could just undo the bolt that's holding the steering dampener onto the frame, and the whole thing can just come off. Next is to remove the brake lines, which are held on by 2 bolts in the front and 3 more bolts on the inside of the frame. Then the whole thing can just slide out. I then moved on to the shift lever so I can take that off. Then I undid the bolts that are holding on the sprocket cover so I can take that off and remove the chain from the front sprocket. I also disconnect wires for the side stand, quick shifter and O2 sensor while I'm here. We're almost ready to drop the engine, and to do that I need to loosen the lower mount, top mount, and then followed by the side engine mounts. Let's have a look at our beautiful mess over here. So we've got our engine off the frame, which is pretty awesome. This thing kind of came off the way I wanted it to. Like I said, along with the front end, with everything hooked up. So when we go and put this thing back together, I'm just gonna unclip these connectors here, hook them up to the connectors on that engine, and we should be good. So our next step is to separate this frame from that swing arm. So in order to separate these two, I'm gonna undo the rear suspension first by loosening this bolt over here. Then I'll move on to removing this bolt, which is also held on by a castle nut right over here. And then I think I'm gonna take off this side stand just so we can have the frame sitting flat. I mean, I'm gonna have to take it off anyway. Then I'm gonna undo this bolt over here that's holding this whole link onto the frame. Then we should be good to just separate these two. I'm starting with the upper shock bolt because this will relieve some tension on the swing arm and make the whole thing a lot easier to remove. I loosened up the swing arm shaft, then I could move on to the side stand. These bolts are on there pretty tight, as you can imagine how much weight the side stand holds. Next is the swing arm link bolt. Then I can knock the shock loose at the top. The right side of the swing arm shaft is held on by a castle nut. Once loose, I can then unscrew the shaft from the frame. The last thing that I need to do now is undo the bottom bolt that's holding the shock in place. Then I can just pull up the shock from the top. And just like that, the swing arm can be separated from the frame. The last few bits that are left are the rear sets, and these are pretty easy to remove. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you take apart an R1. Everything is off the frame. I just have a couple of bolts that I still have on here, which I'll take off, and then I left this guy on here because this is very tricky to get out, guys. So I think I'll just ask the guys to mask it up just so they don't get paint on it. But other than that, this frame is completely bare, guys. So I'm gonna go and drop this off, and in a couple of days we should have this back freshly painted and looking brand new. Alrighty guys, while we have our frame out to get painted, I think it's a pretty good time to work on this engine. So there are two main things that I want to do to this engine. The first one being I want to give this thing a nice clean, guys. This thing is looking so dirty and dusty, and I don't want to put it back into the frame looking like this. The second thing I want to do is I want to change out the spark plugs in this engine because I don't know how long they've been in here. Plus it's going to be a whole lot easier changing them out now while we have the engine by itself like this than with the engine in the frame. So that's the second thing that I want to do right there. So I think I'm going to clean the engine first, then we'll move on to fitting our brand new spark plugs. It's always a good idea to clean out your engine if you've got it out of the bike. You might say you wash your bike regularly, and even then you can't really get into those hard to reach places. So doing it while you have it out of the bike is a no-brainer to me. Whoa guys, this thing cleaned up so nice guys. I'm really happy with the way it came out. Like, this thing looks brand spanking new. I mean, the camera kind of doesn't pick it up all that well, but from where I'm standing, this thing is looking nice guys. I'm really happy with the way it came out. So the next thing we're gonna do guys, like I said, is change out those spark plugs for a brand new set that I got. So I'm gonna pull one out just so we can do a bit of a comparison between one of those spark plugs and a brand new spark plugs and see how the used spark plug looks against a new one. Right, so I'm gonna pull the closest one to us, which is number 4, and I've got my 14mm deep socket. All right guys, there's our spark plug over there. As you can see, this thing is pretty used up. And here's our NGK spark plug. So you can see guys how new this one looks. And there's the comparison. All right, so I'm gonna put this one in, tighten it up, throw on the coil pack, and then I'll do the rest. New spark plugs are in. The engine is looking nice and clean guys. I'm super happy with what we got done today. All we need to do now is get this engine on our frame guys, and you guys will be happy to know that the guy who's painting it called me earlier and he told me it'll be ready to be picked up first thing tomorrow. So I'm pretty excited guys. I really can't wait to get this engine in that frame guys. So let me catch you guys tomorrow when we've got the frame back and we can finally assemble everything back together. Check this thing out guys. I mean, just check this frame out guys. This thing came out so nicely guys. I love this satin black. I almost made a mistake and went with matte black, but the painter made an executive decision and put on a satin black coat on there, and I absolutely love it guys. I mean, check this area out here guys, where we had all that scoring, where the guys heated the metal up. All of that is gone guys. This thing is looking nice and fresh guys. I even got the inside painted guys. I didn't skip anything. I wanted everything to look nice and fresh guys, and I think we accomplished that. Like I said, I'm really happy with the paintwork, guys. Ah man, I just can't stop looking at this thing, guys. At every angle, this frame looks absolutely stunning. I even got this upper triple painted as well, guys, just so it can match this satin black finish that we've got on the frame. And this thing also came out super nicely, guys. Everything is looking nice and new, guys, just the way I wanted it to. I'm really happy that we got these painted and looking right. But now it's time to get back to work, guys. It's finally time to start putting this Aron back together for the last time, guys. I think I'm gonna start with getting the frame onto the engine because I think that's gonna be the most easiest. Then I'm gonna move on to the rear suspension, get the swing arm on, then we'll move on to the front, get everything on there, then go back to the rear subframe, get everything hooked up, and then yeah, we'll kind of see where we are at that point. But enough talking, guys, let's get to it. I decided to start with mounting the frame onto the engine because doing it this way means I don't have to lift up the engine later while trying to align bolts. Remember, guys, work smarter, not harder. Next to go on is the swing arm, followed by the rear suspension. Then I can start tightening the swing arm shaft and put the castle nut back on. Then I can hook up the lower links and tighten up the upper shock bolt. I then put some paint marker on all the bolts that I've tightened. The rear sets are going on next. I start with the left side since it's the easiest to put on. Then I turn my attention to the right side. This is usually the trickier side because you have to move over the brake master cylinder along with the rear brake light switch. I tried to put on the heel guard, but it seems like this one is also used as an exhaust hanger, so I'll put that on later. Then I move on to the front where I can refit the brake lines. This would have definitely been easier to fit without the engine in there, so I probably should have fit that in first. So just like the engine, I'm going to clean up all these loose parts and make sure that everything goes back on looking nice and clean. The rear subframe is coming on next. I know I said I'd start with the front, but I ordered a C-spanner for the steering stem locking nuts and I was still waiting for that to arrive, so I decided to carry on with the rear. The side stand is going on next. Once that's secure, I can hook up the gear shift linkage pipe, followed by the side stand connector, the O2 sensor, and the quick shifter. It's almost time to put back the lower triple, but before I do that, I'm gonna put some grease on the steering stem bearings. I put some more grease on both the upper and lower collars just to make sure there's absolutely no friction there. I slide the steering stem through the collar, then I can put on the dust cover and use my brand new C-spanner to tighten the locking nuts. Once all of that is tight, I can refit the steering dampener onto the frame. I can then fit the air duct along with the headlights back onto the frame. Because I used the wiring harness on the 2023 engine, I had to remove all the wiring that was on the front, which came with our 2022 bike. It's finally time to put the forks back on, so this bike can stand on its own two wheels. Everything goes back on super easily now that everything has been straightened. It's time to reassemble the airbox back onto the engine. I connect the hoses back onto the airbox, then I can tighten everything down. Unfortunately, I forgot to plug in one of the wires, but it's a good thing I noticed it now because I could just undo everything, plug it back in and retighten all the bolts. This bike came with a very dirty paper air filter, so I decided to upgrade it to a Simoda performance filter. And look at the difference. I was getting ready to tighten up the airbox, then I noticed that this brace was supposed to go in first, so I had to undo everything, tighten it onto the frame, then retighten everything back on. It sucks when you find mistakes, but it's always good when you can sort it out earlier rather than later when everything is put together. So now I can plug in the injectors and it's time to bring in the tank. Alrighty guys, I figured this might be a good time to kind of pause a little bit and see what we've done so far to this bike. You guys are probably also exhausted and dizzy from all those time lapses, but hopefully the voiceovers kind of helped you guys understand what I was doing as I was going. But check this bike out guys, this thing is coming along so nicely. I'm really happy with the progress that we're making with this bike. I mean, look at that frame guys, that thing is looking stunning over there. We've got our front end all back together. We're still missing the front wheel, but that's on the way, that's being shipped. We've got our rear subframe back on the bike, the swing arm is back on the bike, we've got our foot pegs nice and secure there guys. We even threw on our airbox and tank and everything, and this thing is looking nice guys. I think the tank is actually kinda almost completing this thing. It's making it look like a bike now, because without that thing it just looks like a shell. But yeah guys, I'm really happy with how this bike is coming along. And even though we've made all this progress guys, we still have a couple more things that we need to do. You guys will see that I don't have the engine mounts on both sides. I'm still waiting for the hardware. We haven't fitted our exhaust, our radiator, our oil cooler, all of that stuff. Our immobilizer is still not working guys. There's the whole ABS module that still needs to be bled and all of that guys. So there's still quite a bit to do on this bike, but there is one thing that I want to do right now guys, and that's check if this bike is still getting power and it still switches on, because we've basically took apart all the wires off this bike, all sorts of sensors, all sorts of relays and stuff like that. So I just want to make sure that we haven't messed with anything that's gonna stop the bike from coming on. But in order to do that, I'm gonna hook up the ECU on the left side, then I'm gonna hook up the dash right over there, then hook up the battery, and hopefully guys turn the key and see if this bike still has life. Alrighty guys, I've got everything hooked up. I've got the ECU connected, I've got the dash plugged in, and the battery is all hooked up, so this thing is getting power. I've got the key right here. It's time to see if this thing is still alive. Yeah. There we go guys, the dash is on. It's cracked, but I can see that it's on. Oh, and the headlights are also on. The bike is making sound, so that's a very good sign guys. That's a really good sign. Alrighty guys, the bike switch is on, which is pretty awesome because that means we can fire this thing up. But unfortunately, I'm gonna leave that for the next episode guys. We still have a few things that we need to do before we can fire that bike up. Like I said, I need to sort out the immobilizer, then we need to fit the exhaust, the radiator, the oil cooler, plus I want to change out the oil that's in this bike. But all of that is going to happen in the next episode guys. If you enjoyed what you've seen so far guys, how this bike is coming along, please hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, leave your comments down below, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace out.